Welcome guys to a new video on the channel. Today we will go over a new deck profile, of course, and today it will be Youthberk. Youthberk is a really cool deck that I enjoy quite a lot in casual play, competitive play. It's a real strong powerhouse in this format, so I will show you my deck profile a bit to show you guys what I really like about this deck and how to play it. There are some things that you really need to know about this deck to play it at your most optimal level. So let's just go right over it, of course. So for the white line, we already begin with just a normal Youthberk white line. Nothing really special. The only thing that you really need to know, for now, they all have youth in their name. So that's so important for some cards. The grade 1 is really good. I think the grade 1 is one of the best in terms of this white line. That you tag the top 3 for a Soulblast from rolled upon. So when you ride to grade 2, to go grade 2 or less, or at a Youthberk from the moment to your hand. So it can really help you to dig through your deck, either find aggressive pieces where you can push your opponent with, or just Youthberk so you can like go for Persona Ride, go for our stuff and stuff like that. And the grade 2 is one boost that you gain. You can Soulblast one and give it 5k. It's on Vanguard and Vanguard Circle, so it's really good. Because sometimes, for example, when your opponent took a defense trigger welder on grade 1, you're on 18, your Vanguard wears a boost, attacks for 18. Now it's like they can just 15k guard it, right? And then it's like, oh, yeah, it's no pass. Now you use the Soul Blast ability for the 5k, and it's still one pass, which is really scary and gives you a lot of tempo if you're in that type of situation. And of course, the grade 3 Youthberk. I think everybody knows what it does right now. But to explain it, it's just that it's a sort of like a waging form type of card where at the end of the battle he attacks, you can write it with full form from your hand as stand. And it doesn't have any drive checks because it loses 2. It also has a secondary skill, which we'll go over later. But this is essentially the white line. Everybody plays it, and it's really fucking good. Also, when you ride over the grade 2, you can counter plus 1 by select the grade 2 or higher from your drop zone to your hand. So I will keep it separated for now. Then for the main deck, I of course play 3 copies of the normal Youthberk. It's just your Persona Ride target. Persona Riding is still really fucking good. You also have the option to play the Youthberk from the trial deck and then play this also in your main deck. I think that's not like, it's a thing you can do, but I don't really like it because the deck space is really super tight in my opinion. So increasing your Persona Ride to 4 is really good. I would do it in some scenarios, some decks, but for this I won't do it because the deck space is really fucking tight. So 3 Tempest, and also you want to have like the availability to his discard skill, which comes up quite often if you're searching for a super specific piece, of course. So 3 copies of that. Then we of course play the 4 copies of Tempest. Tempest is the card that makes this deck, it is what it is essentially. So when you ride in top of it, so it's a revolver, so you can ride it from the other Youthberk. So you ride it and you gain already an extra attack, of course. Then you give the front of 5k, so it's just like 15k across the board. And then counter plus 1 to refill the top 2 cards. And if any of those cards have the same grade as a unit on your opponent's field, you need to put it on the bottom of the deck. So you can essentially go +2 / 2.5 because ball deck is not really a plus, it's a minus for your opponent, but like a minus on field is not as hard as a minus on hand. It generates a lot of value out of that one single counter blast, and this is all you want to spend your counters for. That essentially is what this deck makes the deck it is right now. Then we of course need to play more revolve forms because of the fact that we want to have more consistency, because if you want to like try and get this card every single time on your hand, it doesn't really end up that off. Like, you can break on that sometimes. So you want to play more revolve forms, so we play Gust, and Gust essentially says it's the same as revolve form, so you can write it from the other Youthberk, and when placed due to a revolve form overthrow ability, something like that, you can discard a card in case you drive and 10k. It's really impactful if you want to do your push turns, because this is the card that will grind your game really hard, but this is the card that is essentially the better finisher if you're playing it correctly. I'll explain it over in a moment. But this is essentially your entire grade 3 package. You play quite some grade 3s, which also means with Tempest, you can pressure your opponent's grade 3s a lot, because you will often refill them off the top 2 from Tempest. But also, like, it's just for your consistency. The only thing with this deck, what is really difficult when you play so many grade 3s, is that you sometimes have to cycle out of them. So at the beginning of your game, you already have quite some draw power and stuff like that. It's all in the form of like getting grade 3s to your hand or something. You get a lot of grade 3s to your hand. You can discard some, you don't want to discard some, because like if you're running out of Tempest, you're really screwed. Essentially, if you want to go into the quiet game. So sometimes at the beginning of the game, you're not the strongest player on the board. But the moment you have played all of your grade 3s out of your hand, you turn it into actual pressure, you actually turn it into draw power, and at that moment of your time, you're the strongest player. You have the ability to be like rushed down or like killed before that happens, and that's where the player skill comes into matter, because if you have too many grade 3s in your hand, you need to read the scenario where you can play out of them, right into them, or full form into them, and how you manage that, because you don't want to discard too many, but you also don't want to discard too little, because otherwise your hand is like really clutterfucked with everything that's in your hand, of course. Then for the grade 2s, we play Force Snizel. I like this card for a different reason. So essentially, on place, counter +1, check the top 5 for your 4 form, or any Youthberk essentially. So it can also be the personalized target, and add it to your hand. So it's already like a good plus. It will hit most of the time. I would say in like 3 out of the 4 scenarios. It depends a little bit also on your deck and how it's like built, how it's scheduled, because lots of things goes to the bottom of the deck. If you're using, for example, Youthberk skill, you send a lot of cards to the bottom of the deck. If you know, oh, they're all on the bottom, yeah, good luck finding them. But you shuffle your deck, which is really important, because this is the only card that lets you shuffle the entire deck. So it may sound like a little bit weird, but sometimes when you send a lot of cards to the bottom of the deck, and you don't want them there, such as triggers, combo pieces, stuff like that, you really want to shuffle your deck, and this is the card that will be enabling that. It will gain 5k, so if you use it on the grade 2 turn, it's a really strong push, because then it can swing into your opponent for 15, which means like on grade 2 there are no 10k shields, so it's a really hard card to do, because either it's a 50k shield or they take it, and like taking it is like a big bonus for you, of course. Also on the tank, when your grade 3 has ridden from a grade 3, you can give your fingers 5k. You can do this in 2 different scenarios. For example, where you have a full form, of course, you will full form, you go over your Vanguard and you win a grade 3 over grade 3. Then when this attacks, gives the Vanguard 5k. But you can also do it on personalized turns, because you wrote a grade 3 over a grade 3, which means Snizel can also give 5k to the Vanguard. Well, like, it's not that big of a deal, but it's something funny that can come up. And for the rest, it's just like, you need to play it because of consistency, but sometimes you don't have just a counter blessing, you would just put on the field, because you don't want to be CP the Knight, essentially. And I play 2 copies of this. So essentially what this says, if you have Youth Vanguard, which you will always have because the entire item has Youth in its name, of course, it has 5k shield. The reason why we play this is because essentially it turns down aggressiveness. Lots of decks right now swing for 15k on grade 2. For example, Snizel does it. With this, you have a 10k shield on grade 2, which you can then use to guard against those pesky attacks. Also, on your grade 3 turn, when you ride from your right lane into your Youthberk, you can resurrect it with the grade 2 Youth to add it back to your hand, so you can 10k shield for a counter burst, which is like okay-ish value, but it's really good in my opinion. Also, the thing is, I want to play more grade 2s in this deck, because the thing is generally with this deck, if you don't really run that many attackers slash cards you want to put on the front row of the field. So increasing your grade 2 size means you have more cards to put in the field in the first place, because you need to play all those with 4 forms, and that means you need to like put out some other attackers inside of your deck. For the rest, you want to increase your grade 2 size because Tempest sends one of the grades you have revealed from the top 2 back to the one of attack from your opponent. And the most of the things that you want to send back, in my opinion, are grade 2s. So you want to play at least a little bit sizable grade 2 so you can see it from time to time. And then I play to Maple. Maple essentially recurs every time, a single time you ride a grade 3. This may be from your right deck, but can also do the Persona Ride. And since this deck really has a Persona Ride consistency in this, like it's sort of like its engine, you will reoccur this card multiple times. The thing is why this card is so great, as you may see, this is the end of our grade 2 lineup. These are essentially all the beaters who you want to reliably call down. It's only 8 if you think about it. So we want to have like reoccurable like beaters or like attackers that we want to have in our deck. Maple doesn't gain any power, but we are quite consistent of giving a power due to Tempest, Persona Ride, everything, that we are able to play it. I think in most decks, like it's like it can be worse because you don't have the Persona Ride consistency, but in this deck you really have that, in my opinion, to warrant its like a place in the deck. And also, it's just a really good card. Like if you think about it, it's essentially a combine rusher, which most people value extremely high. That is, in my opinion, better to come out because it doesn't gain counterblast, but it also doesn't gain power. But like, don't just counterblast to have a reoccurring unit is really good. The only thing is like sometimes when you play against Eva, they just bind this with the order, and then you have a second one to have it live at your disposal, of course. You would think, oh, you only play 2, so you don't really have that big of a chance to see it. You're again wrong, because this deck goes to his deck super fast, extremely fast. So that means that even cards as 2-ups you see quite often during a match. It may not be that you see it like from turn 1, but you may see it even through like multiple Persona Ride turns, so it can even still reoccur like 1, 2, maybe even 3 times if you're lucky with it. And then for the grade 1s, we play Wayward Angel. Wayward Angel is an extremely good card again, because like as you can see in this deck, it all has some really good value cards. It's just like value city in my opinion. Wayward Angel is also, it has like a little bit of a combo potential, of course. So the thing what it does is when it's being discarded, when you're grade 3 or higher, you can Soul Blast on and call it to the rearguard circle. It doesn't sound that fancy, but it actually is. Because first of all, when you discard it coming to grade 3, it checks grade 3 when you are resolving the ability, which means you ride first, then resolve the ability, you're on grade 3, so you can call it down. Super good in my opinion. Second of all, you have a discard cost of the other Youthberk, the Tempest, I think. Skyfall Arms, almost. Don't really have the names too much in my head, but like use it for Skyfall Arms to like search top 3, add a revolve form or a grade 2 or lower to the field, and then you can also just proc this, of course. The only thing is with this card is you need to be certain about how you want to do your plays, because this deck doesn't really use any soul, like it's only this in the right line essentially that use soul. You generate a lot of soul because at the end of the turn all your revolves go back into the soul and you ride Skyfall Arms. So you have plenty of soul to work with. The only thing is with your right lane, when you use the grade 1 youth, of course, that means you will be having 2 soul when you were hitting grade 3. If you use the grade 2 youth on grade 2, that means you only have 1 soul. You can still activate Wayward Angel, but you cannot do it the second time if you have multiple in your hands. Keep that in mind. Also, a very funny play that I really like to do in this deck is when you ride to grade 3, you have Wayward in your hand. So you use its skill, you Soul Blast, for example, the grade 2 out from the right line. You Counter Blast and then call it out, of course. You use the Counter Blast of the right line and add it back to your hand so you can call it down. This unit is Soul Blast for 5k, also works on rearguard circle. So that means that you have a 15k attacker constantly on the board. But it needs a boost, which is Wayward Angel you just used. So you have a 25k unit constantly hitting your opponent without any Persona Ride, without any like fancy type of skill. With Tempest it's 30, with Persona Ride it's 40. It's a really good like column to make constantly and bash your opponent's face, and of course a Wayward Angel is just the type of card that really enables that kind of pressure. Also 10k boost is nothing to squeeze in, because it can also be a frontal attacker when you're going into your like of course. As in like only your grade 2, and your opponent is on grade 2 and you're going into temples. This can hit 15k because you like discarded during the main phase and then promote it up, so you can attack with it, of course. Keep in mind when you use the skill, you can only call to the background. Also, after like all explaining, the neat thing what you can do is with Gust. So let's say, for example, you have an entire field set up to bash your opponent's face in, and then you attack with your Skyfall arms, and then boost of course by something. Then you use Gust and you discard for drive check. You can then discard this and stop it. So that means you have a second boost for your finger. It increases your killing potential extremely, because like if you have Persona Road and Gust is then 33, you gave a 10k boost, which is 43, which is a super awkward number for your opponent to guard with. And you will be usually have a twin drive, because we have this little card. This card is extreme, like this reminds me of Luar back in the day. Well, most people even like remind Luar of back in the day. So what it does is when your full form is placed, you can put it into soul and increase or decrease its drive check to 1. Keep in mind that in combination with Gust increases its drive check by 1. So you can do it in combination with Gust to increase its drive check to 2, but you need to resolve this ability first and then Gust, because if you do it the other way around, it doesn't work, because then you increase your drive check to 1, and then because this sets it to 1 and Gust increases it by 1. So you need to like keep that in mind, of course. Also, it's a 10k boost behind the Vanguard, so you boost with this first, and then it goes into a soul to, of course, like have a drive check on your Vanguard, and the drive check is an immense pressure for you to work with. Then for the rest, we play just 3 PGs, which is like normal. We play the Elementaria, which is also normal, nothing to like wrong with, of course. It's just your normal lineup. And then for the triggers, we play 4 into soul crits. Don't really use the effect all that much because you don't need the soul. It's more for against prison and stuff like that, and you don't really care about triggers anyway in this deck. This dude, I really like this artwork. I wish it was in a SP or something like that, because I really like the edgier type of artwork, especially also with Youthberk and stuff. Then we play 3 fonts. I really like the shoot value, but what I also like about this deck is that with how it works, and essentially with attack patterns, fonts are really good, and you will most of the time have a constant front row setup with maple and stuff like that. The only thing is you cannot really play draws in my opinion, because you will go to deck out quite fast in the deck. And then 4 heals, and then 1 over trigger. This over trigger is primarily used for Bastion. It isn't that good in my opinion. It's this deck because you only gain 2 drive checks most of the time, and if you check it early game, you don't really do all that much. You can even play the Grey Elemental PG, or like the Grey Elemental over trigger. It's just an over trigger. It's busted. Just play one of the 2. It doesn't really matter which one. I really just like this one, of course. So that's it for the deck profile. Hopefully you guys enjoy it. Comment down below if you have any questions, and I will see you guys later. Goodbye.